CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Now, this man, a lot of you know who he is. It's Bob Latino with Prelical. And today we're going to talk a little bit about his role as an UpKeep ambassador. And we're going to talk a little bit about another special thing that he's involved in that's making a difference for the industry. And no script today. There never is. Not on CMMS Radio. Bob, welcome back to CMMS Radio. Was that?
I said, if there is a script, I didn't read it.
It's true. So welcome back to CMMS Radio. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what I wanted to talk about today was your role as an UpKeep ambassador. I'm also an UpKeep ambassador. A lot of people out there may or may not understand what that really means. So I wanted to pose the question to you. What does it mean to you, and what do you really do as an UpKeep ambassador?
Well, I gotta say, I don't know where the name ambassador comes from, but it makes it sound a lot more sophisticated than I am. I see it as a way of Ryan to be able to keep his finger on the pulse of industry. So we're the folks out in front of customers all the time. We're in the manufacturing plants, and we see things that are revelational, and then we see things that are not that revelational. And so, there's a lot of the academics out there that they refer to these acronyms, work is imagined versus work is done. And everybody can relate to what those two concepts mean, because work is imagined is what we write in our procedures and the way we execute in terms of like CMMS or something like that. But we all know that work is done is a totally different thing, that when you're in the thick of the moment over there, you're going to do what you have to, make judgments. I'm going to veer away from that work is imagined. And that's really the way things get done in the field. So when you're looking at versatility of like the CMMS products, and what Ryan's trying to do is that Ryan's UI and how easy he makes that product is the key to people using it and wanting to use it. And I think a lot of times I think of SAP and things of that nature, where a lot of horsepower, but you really have to know what you're doing to make it easy. So that's an automatic turnoff to if I'm a lubricator in the field, or I'm a vibe tech, or something like that. I don't know if there's a definition of what an ambassador does, but I know that I believe in the product. I've known Ryan, I guess, going on 5-10 years when he started this. And in his book, he was kind enough to let me write a part of that. Asset operations. I mean, just the concept, and anybody who's been in the business long enough, if you've been decades in, you know that there's always those three silos of data, and then you got to go to each of these to find what you're looking for. And his consolidating of that and the concept of actually doing it is that's where we have to migrate to, is that, with AI and the way everything is moving, you need to be on it just like that. And yeah. I don't want to have to go to 3 different places and then find the data and tell me 3 different things. Because I see that all the time. Is I'll be out in the field with doing root cause analysis kind of stuff, and they'll be telling me that, well, this is what the procedure said, and that procedure ain't even for the technology that's in there now. So you put in the technology and you never updated the procedure. Same with your P&IDs and things like that. Is that people run off on those assumptions, and they just treat it as fact, and then we just roll on, and we get really good at doing it over and over.
This idea that the messaging is the same around this industry, and how things unfold is the same throughout this industry, whether it's now, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. It's because those assumptions can happen outside of our awareness if we're in a plant, we're in a facility, we're leveraging different best practices, and some of what we're doing within the technology can start to fall away from our purview because we're focused on things like blocking and tackling, putting out all the fires, and somebody didn't go in and update something, and somebody down the line didn't update this over here. And now all of a sudden you've lost sight of that in your data stack or your digitization, whatever you want to call it. And I think when people ask me about being an ambassador, an UpKeep ambassador, for me it's my willingness to help somebody if they're stuck using the platform for a certain thing they're trying to do in their facility, because I'm more of a facilities guy. Whereas if they brought up something that's, reliability centric, then I'm going to have them talk to you. I might have them talk to George Williams. I might have them talk to Howard Penrose, because as soon as it gets out of my kind of area of expertise where I can help, I'm going to pull in the right person, because that allows them, the customer, to thrive and not make as many of those assumptions or lose sight of what they're really trying to do, because it's technology and it's a tool. You're the guy that knows how that tool fits in. So, question: when you're with reliability centered maintenance, right, or if you're in doing root cause analysis, how do you think, or how would you say that feeds into or plays inside of the CMMS once you've done an RCA?
Well, I mean, I don't know that the role of a CMMS to get into the analytics about understanding why failures occur,
Mm-hmm.
as much as they have to be able to suck it in from somewhere, from another tool. So, and I'm all about that. Is that I don't see CMMS as the doing the analysis part. It's certainly going to document the conclusions and the actions and the tracking and measuring effectiveness and all that kind of stuff. But as a tool itself, I don't think it's designed to be an RCA tool. All that means is that it has to just be able to make it easy to import data from an RCA tool to do that. And because when you're doing true RCA, and we've had these discussions ad nauseum about when you do it right, if you're not just in the 5 why world and thinking that everything is a linear, failure is all linear, and then I have one root cause all the time. Well, that's a unicorn world to me. If you're doing RCA on serious events, then you know that you're going to deal with the physics of failure, whatever broke. You know that beneath that, there's always going to be a person who made a decision to do or not do something, and we want to avoid that blame culture. Is that we're more RCA is more about understanding why that person thought it made sense at the time. That's where your meat comes from, and that gets down into these organizational systems like we were just talking. Is that maybe I followed a procedure and the procedure was obsolete. Maybe you made me a lubricator and you gave me the tools to go ahead and do it, but nobody ever showed me how to do it. If you have routes, that'd be nice to know. Just tell me what that route is. So understanding how systems influence decision makers will reduce bad outcomes, but that's not the role of a CMMS. The root causes that you would have for correcting systems, they do have to be executed in some fashion in terms of a work order but those are going to be non-mechanical type of tasks. Those are going to be that I have to fix systems. So a CMMS has to be accommodating that that's the reality of what RCAs should be pumping out, and not just that we had fatigue of a bearing or something like that. It's not all just the physics of failure. It gets down into what you know where I'm going with this with Ken, is that he loves that human stuff. Well,
and that's one of the realities that we're always going to not harp on, but always point out, even though it appears to be obvious that the human involvement and the human stuff and how people work together and how culture and process kind of supersede these technologies that we leverage. In other words, the technology is going to augment it. It's a tool, right? The CMMS is a tool, and who uses the tool? Humans. So that's not going to change.
And you know that I got brands all around me. That's why I went to the community of human and organizational learning, is because they practice a lot on the social science side and not the physical science side. So that's really what the merging RCA has always been for me, is the merging of the physical sciences with the social sciences.
Right.
I was going back to a point you were making earlier about, you know, if I don't know something, I go to Howard or I go to other friends of mine that have these specialties, because I have made a career out of ignorance. And not many people could say that, because there's so much that I don't know. That's why I have so many friends. Is that as an unbiased facilitator, one of my superpowers is the fact that I'm not expected to know. I can ask anything. Because if you're an expert and you're leading that team, they're going to expect you to know these things. And if I come in there and start off with a blank sheet, say, I don't have your answer. I say, I'm going to tell you that the answer is in the team right here. I said, my job is to get it out of you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I know that I need the right SMEs on my team. But a lot of times we're so fixated on the physics of the failure that, you know, if I'm really good at the physics of failure, I'm not really well versed in the human and the system side.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, engineers are great on the physics side, but they suck on the social science side. And I can tell you on the social science side, they don't give jack about physics either. So, you know, it's the well-roundedness of understanding. You don't have to be an expert in both, but you have to know the contribution of both.
Well, and at a minimum, you have to understand enough of it to be able to respect it, so that you're not always going against the grain. Because, you know, what if we move away from the plant floor and we're in a meeting, whether it's a stand up or, you know, whatever, we're in a boardroom or something like that, we're going to be talking about these things. So we have to at least have some awareness and understanding, and of course the respect for those individuals that are on that other side. I don't know if it ever changes where you get that physical and that human kind of stuff to really blend well. I think when it does happen, a lot of good stuff gets done and gets done well.
I think the pivot point, and I use a time glass. What do you call it?
Hourglass.
Hourglass. I use that optic to say that you know, any undesirable outcome is going to have a human decision maker involved, whether you like it or not. So that's kind of the middle of the hourglass with that, and that's the decision maker, and anything above that is a consequence of the decision. So that's where all that physics stuff is that I trigger physical observable things to happen. Whether I'm changing the temperatures, pressures, or flows as an operator, or whether I align something in a certain way. But you know, those are going to be the physical observations of my decisions and the consequences. But beneath that is going to be understanding why I thought it was the right decision at the time. And I don't care whether you're in a hospital, in a bank, in a school. This is more psychology than it is saying that it's industry specific, because to me this is just basic critical thinking to go through that, and that's the way it happens no matter what system you work in. I don't care where you work. That's why I can go out and do what I do anywhere. I got some friends I'm meeting tomorrow that work for analytics in convenience stores. So it applies there, because people make decisions that cause bad outcomes. And instead of blaming them, we should be interested in understanding why they thought it was the right thing to do. I mean, think about that. If your first question to someone, I think I've mentioned this in one of the previous things we've done together, but just think how non-personal and non-threatening. Instead of asking people, why didn't you follow the procedure? You know, why didn't we had the rules and you didn't follow the rules? You were trained and all of that. is why don't you just ask them, say, that day, what would right look like? So if you were there and saying you had it to do over again, what does right look like? And if they describe something that's not right, then they don't know. No, it's not clear what is right. So was I not? Did we not have a procedure? Was the procedure inadequate, insufficient? Or was the procedure there and I didn't follow it? And that gets off to that work is done again, and say, why do we deviate from the procedure?
How do you when you're in that real time situation, and instead of like coming at someone, you're now asking them what would right look like, and then they're describing it, and you've seen there's a misstep, something they weren't aware of, something they've misunderstood, etc. What do you do then to kind of not only bring that to light, but in a way where you have influence rather than the power struggle and somebody's, worried about, when people are wrong or they've made a mistake, sometimes they get really freaked out. They've lost sight of the opportunity, right? To no fault of their own. Well, what do you do to make it more likely that you go on a journey to making them better at doing it right?
A lot of this boils down to having the courage of leadership to look in the mirror and say, I'm part of the problem. Because in most of those cases, like I just described, where people were doing it wrong, is probably because they're taking shortcuts. And when the shortcut works and there's no negative consequence, then they're probably getting pats on the back because we got more production in, everybody was safe. And that continues on. There's a slide that I use from the Texas City explosion report, and it's called Forgetting to Be Afraid. Now think about when you have right, and that would be like the work is imagined. You have this line of work is right, and then I take a deviation from that, which in the technical terms they call normalization of deviance. So I deviate from that, and then I save some time, I save some production, and I didn't get in trouble. There was no negative consequence, and nobody's reprimanding me or anything. So what you've just done is that you've eroded the standard, because what's going to happen? What are we going to do when we do that? Is that we're going to try it again? I'm going to take another shortcut. So you take these shortcuts more and more, and there's people, the leadership knows you're doing it because you're doing it as the trade-off to get more production. And then the only time that you're held to account, this is where you go from a hero to a zero in about 3 seconds, is that I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to get reprimanded and disciplined because I made the same decision today as I did yesterday. There was just a new factor introduced on this day. That's the only thing that made it different. If you go back, and there's probably a few people watching this that remember the Space Shuttle Challenger, but that design flaw was there since the first mission of 51 missions. And the only reason that the Challenger blew up was because it was 36 degrees the day that it was at Cape Canaveral. And that O-ring that was there, it didn't have the elasticity that it should have had to block fuel from coming out. But that design flaw was in there from the beginning. The only thing that made it surface was the new factor of the temperature difference. So, we get used to things. They knew they had a design flaw. They knew that they were leaking gas, but we kept going up mission after mission because it kept coming back. And then we did that until we didn't.
All of this reminds me of when we're talking about behaviors, how we're measured, influencing our behaviors, and then how a behavior like taking a shortcut that works reinforces and highly increases the likelihood of that continued behavior. It's just an interesting thing to kind of think about and wrestle with that if only we could be more, I think I want to say disciplined about the steps we follow. We already know why we follow them. We don't deviate, and we don't deviate by design until, of course, something's introduced that tells us, okay, we didn't know this because we couldn't have foreseen it. Now we're going to adjust what our procedural steps are. I wonder if it's is it a laziness type thing?
You're never going to find a place where they don't take shortcuts. And if you write procedures that are too rigid, then that's going to be the demise of the organization, because there's no way you can cover every eventuality of what variables could be at play on any given day in a procedure. You have to allow the judgment and creativity to be in that decision-making process. So, you have to give people the latitude to make these judgments, but you also have to give them the tools and support to understand how to make better decisions. So if my systems that are supporting them are not that good, then they're going to make the best decision they can with what they got. So, that's why a lot of times these organizations don't have the courage of leadership to acknowledge, that's what I said, look in the mirror and say, we're part of the problem publicly, because they're going to say, we contributed to this failure because we didn't give you the proper tools. We didn't give you the proper training. We didn't give you the proper procedures and policies in there. So instead of just creating a blame culture and, that's going to be their fault too. I mean, if you're looking at this, it's probably an oxymoron saying it's their fault, is that if they permit blame to be a conclusion, then that's an issue in and of itself that should be looked at.
I wonder, so for my experiences, I want to say the majority of the time, rather than every time, when there's more transparency and there's a leadership approach that's about owning and acknowledging their role and their part in issues that arise, whatever they might be, good, bad, or indifferent, right? Depending on what we're really talking about. I think that type of leadership really does create an environment of thriving. And I think a lot of people know that. However, what I'm curious about, I don't think we're going to resolve it, but why then, with so many people knowing that's a much better way, do they not do it? What are they so afraid of that prevents leaders from acknowledging their role and accepting at least partial responsibility for mistakes and mishaps and whatnot? Anything you can say about that?
Well, I think in today's world, when your average tenure at a place might be 2 years, or you're on a fast track, it's like I'm not going to be here in a couple of years. So I'm not going to institute any of this kind of stuff because I won't get credit for it. I'm being measured right now by my production, and I'm hitting my goals for my bonuses, and then I'm out the door. I could relate this because the conversation we had earlier is that I spent 25 years doing investigations in hospitals.
Yeah.
And there's studies out there that will say, hospitals are known that when they make an error, they'll circle the wagons, they will distance themselves from the family, and everybody will lawyer up, and then it's a me and a you thing. Versus when you know you're wrong, say you're wrong. Most of the time, and some of the studies that I've read in there, is that it's actually more economical. The payouts are less because the family really wants closure, acknowledgement that the hospital made the error, and closure. And they don't want that animus relationship of having to go through court and rehashing the death of their loved one, and or maiming, or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of similarities, and when you look at systems, every organization is a system. I have an input, I have a transformation, and I have an output. And that's, as a reliability people, that's what we have to look at. What are the inputs, transformations, and outputs? And I think in any organization you have people working, is that you have to be able to acknowledge when you're wrong. The $7 words coming out of academia these days is called psychological safety. And if you're people watching this, look that up. There's a ton of it. It comes with from a researcher named Amy Edmondson, writes extensively about it. But, I mean, it's a fancy word for creating an environment where people can be candid and not in fear of retribution.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a new concept. It's a new word. It's a new phrase, but it's not a hard concept to understand. But it certainly is difficult to execute because we're not good at saying we're wrong.
So that right there, saying or admitting
right
that we're wrong, that like kind of covers all of it. Like if we wanted to really boil it down, because there's a lot of fear around that in many different areas, right? I lose face, I lose my job, I get embarrassed, whatever. It's just so fascinating.
Think about there's another debate at the higher academic research levels on it's called the zero imperative, but the zero harm, and people that go strive, because it's an admirable thing that I don't want to put a tolerance on what we'll tolerate as a number of injuries. So we strive for zero, but if you look at the converse of that, what does that create when you telling people that maybe I'm tying financial rewards and your evaluations and things like that to hitting zero? We don't want any. Well, the reality of that in the field is if my pay is attached to that, or somehow bonuses are attached to that, then I'm gonna manipulate that metric, and I'm gonna make sure that they're not reported. So, and I'm not going to be the one to report it because it's in my performance appraisal. So, what happens when you do those kind of things with good intentions is that people are going to underreport, and then when you're underreporting, leadership is saying, "Hey, everything's great because we're not getting any report." That should be the red flag that says something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, that's when no news is not good news.
Yeah. And you have to be able to be cognizant of those kind of signals, is that you're driving reporting underground.
Again,
there's a flip side to that too, that I have a problem. I don't believe that. I think the zero harm should be an aspiration, not a goal. Because I always use the analogy that if I'm like here where I live in Virginia, in Richmond, Virginia, there's two major hospital systems. There's HCA and then there's Bon Secours. Well, if HCA has got a big banner up on the side of their thing and they say, our goal, our aspiration is zero harm, and you got Bon Secours across the street and they got one that says, our goal is only 6 people per year we're going to kill. Nobody's going to do that. A tolerance is what you're willing to tolerate. And, that's why I believe we should shoot for zero. But, nobody's naive enough to think you're ever going to get there, is that you aspire to it.
Yeah.
And you don't put a tolerance on it.
Yeah, your strive should always be your strive because you're trying to achieve excellence in outcomes.
Yeah.
And the reality of whether you're meeting that strive or not is typically going to be less than, but we hope that that's as minute as possible, because the strive gets you as close to, it's the idea of, chasing perfection. You're never going to hit it. That's not a thing.
No.
Just like, here's just kind of a change up here. Can failures in maintenance environments be predicted?
Yeah. if you see certain behaviors and you have near miss, I'm willing to observe and report near misses or close hits or close calls or whatever you want to call them. There's a lot of signals out there, and I could go ahead. I've been preaching this for 40 years. This all this RCA stuff, the proactive RCA stuff. The unfortunate thing is that most of the time we get called into a company, it's because of a reactive situation.
Mm-hmm.
Even though our primary push is proaction, and that's what reliability is about proaction. But if it was up to me, we are conditioned to do RCA on triggers that have been met, thresholds for safety or dollars or production or whatever the case may be. But there's no reason that we can't do it proactively. And most people are thinking about what I'm saying. Well, how the hell do I do it proactively? Well, if you're in high hazard industries, especially, is that you're dealing with risk assessments and you have to do the HAZOPs and the things like that. And there's no reason I can't take an FMEA and do a Pareto of that and say 20% or less of these potential failure modes account for 80% or more of my risk. There's absolutely no reason you can't do an RCA on an unacceptable level of risk. Take that 20% and go out and pick one or two that aren't world hunger and world peace and knock out the risk so you don't suffer the consequence.
My follow-up question was then going to be, can we actually, because this is like marketing stuff that I see out there, and I've even said it myself in my past life, where, well, we're going to leverage this technology or this process, and we're going to fix your culture in this way because we're going to eliminate downtime.
Well, again, it's okay to aspire to it, just like the zero harm thing is that it's never going to happen. And I don't think anybody, at least that I work with, is naive to think that you're going to attain that, but it's not bad to aspire to it.
Yeah.
That's, in my humble opinion.
Of course. And that's, we're here to get people thinking. We're here to get people to maybe go look some stuff up, maybe evaluate what they're doing, what they're seeing, so that they can find ways to improve. That's it. We're not here to call anybody out, kind of like you were saying earlier, where there's an approach when you are looking at, kind of the cause and effect, so to speak, when these different types of things happen. So this is more about striving towards being better, which...
Whenever you have an opportunity, when you leave whatever you're watching here, you go out and you have a chance to blame somebody, just pause. What's that little acronym? STAR, Stop, Think, Act, Review. Is that go ahead and say, without casting judgment or blame, think to yourself and say, why did that make sense to this person? And because I get a paycheck from here, and this is how I feed my family. I did not do it with the intention of the outcome that I had. So what made me believe that it was the right decision to make? And I think 9 out of 10 times you're going to find out that people on the other shifts are doing the exact same thing. But in this particular instance, these were shortcuts that had, been building up. They've been observed. They've been permitted. And then, maybe this day we had a new hire in, and all of a sudden, they did something they weren't supposed to, and it coupled with those shortcuts, and it caused a bad outcome. Yeah. I just want people to be open to the fact that don't be slow to jump to blame. And I'm not taking blame and saying that we shouldn't hold people accountable. But don't blame for the sake of indiscriminately blaming people, because the problem's not going to go away. Whatever systems are in place that made them think it was the right decision, if you blame them and discipline them, those systems aren't going away. Somebody else will make a decision off of those. So when you think of the true root system, saying, if we go ahead and we just mow the grass and mow the weed off, you didn't get the roots, and the weed comes back. Overused metaphor, right?
Yeah, but it's appropriate, right? Apropos. I want to ask you a little bit about Reliable Magazine.
Yep.
You've made a lot of contributions there, and they're out there putting out a lot of good information and guidance and insights. With kind of a lineup of people we've talked about. What does that whole thing kind of all about for you? Like, what are you finding to be most rewarding about that when you participate and make those contributions to that publication?
That me and Ken suck at marketing, and, and that's, if somebody else can do it for me, it's really great. Because I got 30 years of content just sitting around. It's timeless because it's not the principles are timeless in terms of relevance. So when they approached me, I was saying, yeah, I said, if you can leverage it, and it's we're at the stage of our lives now where we just want to share this kind of stuff. And even though with the technology as advanced as it is, when you get into this human and organizational system side, it still is probably more relevant today than it was back then. And
Yeah.
And especially because we're in today's world with the emergence of AI and how easy and accessible it is to Joe Public. Now we have to be even more cognizant of trying to understand what's true and what's not true. So, I mean, that's
Wow.
right back into the human and systems things, is that, because you don't know what people are writing is true. And all it's doing is going into the world and scraping up every bit of other people's information, and it's weaving it together.
Yeah, that's something. The reason I said wow is I've thought a lot about that, and kind of, just wondering what's really out there that people can rely upon as being accurate guidance. And these things about AI, artificial intelligence, which is actually a programmatic thing, and it's more about what do we call that, large language models.
Models, yeah.
Yeah, machine learning. And it's like, man, yeah, this is good stuff. It's going to help you, and it can kind of augment a lot of things. But how is it trained? What is it? What is it based on? How do we really know it's accurate? And what everybody's doing right now, so it seems, is, well, it's just accurate. I asked, this thing, or I typed into that thing. I don't want to call out any names because, I don't know what kind of heat I would get for that. But, you type some stuff in and then it answers your question or query, and you might have asked the wrong question in the first place. And where is it getting its information in order to provide you this response?
And I'll hook it back into RCA, but because AI is now being built into RCA programs, which is great. But if I go in now and where I used to have to use my team and ask them, how can a bearing fail, and they would give me their experience. Well, now there's automatic, search AI, and it gives you some suggestions, but and they look impressive. It may not be comprehensive, but you don't know what you don't know. So if I go ahead now, I can build impressive RCAs that are absolutely wrong, and I can do it easily.
So it sounds like you've experimented with it and you get back some results and you're like, this is completely wrong. I mean, how does that change? And what is the unsuspecting supposed to do?
You have to know. I've said this pre this technology, but it's I don't blame people for doing poor analyses as much as I do the people that accept them. So you have to balance that there should be people that are privy to say, to be cognizant enough to know that, where did you get these answers? And though it gave you hypotheses, how did you validate that they're true or not? Other than saying, I think it's this, because it's very easy to do that right now. So I think that the sharpness of the integrity of the analysis has to be done by the people who are reviewing them.
Yeah, very, very big topic of late.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's doing the AI thing or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes, I want to make fun of it, but I just thought it'd be great to ask you, because the difference that I see when getting your views, your thoughts,
Yeah.
your experiences on all these things is with that past and your view to the future is going to be far different. And I think I have to be careful how I want to offend people. It has the type of foundation that's actually more related to these best practices.
I think
Whereas,
it all boils down to trust but verify. I mean, you have access to making it easy to get possibilities. Now you have to validate that they're what happened in your situation, because it doesn't have any context to what your situation is.
yeah, and that's, hey, even in the world of technology with CMMS, that's why we always say one size doesn't fit all, because it's all going to change once you get into the specific environment, and that actually matters. You could have 10 different schools, they're all schools, but they're all different.
Yeah, I'm not an AI aficionado by any stretch. I just bank on AI people that I know, and when you get down into that human stuff again, where AI is great is on the physics side, understanding those types of things that are tangible. But in terms of getting into areas of judgment and creativity and innovation, that's not the strength of an AI tool. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it's not going in that direction, but as far as I know right now, that's where such models would have difficulty, is in where there is not certainty, where there is
Yeah.
judgment at play.
Well, and hopefully they are using a strive, like getting towards being more and more accurate, as close to 100% accurate as possible. Pretty tough to achieve it. It'll get better. It'll improve. It'll be interesting to see how it works. And I think some of it's useful, and I think a lot of it is shiny stuff, magic silver bullets. And
I just want to make me happy with AI, because I want to go to Howard Penrose with his Sasquatch and the hard hat. I want him to put Howard on the top of the hard hat. That Sasquatch.
Well,
He's getting pretty good at it, and he's doing the videos now, and he has the narrations going on. But
oh yeah, I like it too, and we'll make sure that he knows about this, because he'll see the episode. But
he's all over that AI stuff, and
I know,
he's a learning machine.
I get a kick out of it, and it's we did so we do maintenance C stories. We did the first one last year. We did the second one this year, and we try to do it just in time to release it for Veterans Day, because Howard obviously is a United States Navy veteran, and then we have Brian Bieski on it as well. Those two, and then we talk about all kinds of random stuff. Try to make it about maintenance, and then we talk about all these crazy terms, but. Howard's just the best, man. I love what he's doing with the AI stuff, and you get him going on it. What is it really? And boy, oh boy, you need to pack a lunch, boy. He'll tell you.
I want to give a shout out to Bronca, because behind every successful man is a woman who lets it be.
We'll make sure that's in there. We'll make sure.
She's awesome, and it's great to hang around them two together.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap this session, but thank you once again for being on CMMS Radio. Bob Latino, folks.
Well, thank you, sir. Thanks for having me. Even after the first time, you had me back. That's a plus.
Of course. You can come back on this podcast anytime you want.
Well, thanks for everything, and Merry Christmas to everybody, and have a Happy New Year.
You too. This episode is sponsored by UpKeep, purpose-built for maintenance, reliability, and operations teams. Our mobile-first CMMS and asset operations management solution puts work orders, inventory, and asset info in the palm of your hand. Designed for ease of use and adoption, UpKeep aligns your team for peak business performance. Transform your operations. Transform your success with the multi-platform solution of UpKeep. Visit upkeep.com/CMMSradio to receive a dedicated custom discovery session. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.